friends, and welcome to Faerireads, where we talk about the things that make the mundane more magical, namely books. So today is the second part of my February wrap-up. So in this wrap-up, we've got mated lovers romance. We've got a fantasy story with a magical quest. We've got a family drama about sisterly love, and that's all in the same book. That's all just in one book. So there's more. So if that sounds interesting to you, just keep watching. So today I'm finally sitting down back in front of my shelves doing like a normal video for once. It feels like it's been a while since I've done this, so I feel a little bit rusty, but I don't know, it feels really good. The sun is shining now, so we are well past our winter storms we had earlier. So I don't know, I'm just feeling energetic and revived. Spring is in the air. I can kind of feel the change in the seasons coming. I can feel the change in the seasons coming, and it's just really exciting. So I really don't have that much to talk about. I only read 2 books in the last week or so we're gonna jump right into it. So if you saw my reading vlog that I uploaded last week, you will know that I started reading A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. That released while I was, or well, not just me, while most of the southern part of the US was hit with a large snowstorm, or a series of snowstorms, and we were hit pretty hard in my area. We got a lot of snow. I was snowed in for like a week, but I did get to do a lot of reading. It wasn't as much as I had anticipated, but I did manage to read the entire book of A Court of Silver Flames. I did read the entire book of A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas, which is a pretty massive tome, so that's a pretty big accomplishment in my book. I feel like it's such a popular book that I don't have to explain that much about it. I'm sure if you watch booktube videos, you probably have at least heard of it or heard of this series. It's in a series by Sarah J. Maas, who is like a beloved booktube darling, not without controversy, but still very, very popular. It's in her second like big series. I've read her Throne of Glass series, which I liked, which is the YA fantasy, and this series starts with A Court of Thorns and Roses. Yeah, I had to think about it, which is one of those more crossover books. It's one that's technically defined as a new adult genre, kind of in between YA and adult. And it originally is inspired by Beauty and the Beast. So the first book is sort of a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but then it takes a turn, and it just gets, I don't know if weird is the right word, but it just kind of gets a little bit dark, and it also expands into this giant epic fantasy. I love the series for the fairy characters. You can tell by my channel name, I like fairy stories. I have always been drawn to them, and I like the way that Sarah J. Maas does it. They're very mature kind of fairies, but still a little bit dark and tricky, but like not horror. It's not like verging onto horror, but they're just still a lot of fun. And I love the fairy tale inspiration, but I like how she like definitely puts her own twist on everything. But it's just a fun series in general. But I was very disappointed in her latest release in the series, which was a novella. I talk more about that in the reading vlog if you want to know my feelings about that. But I went ahead and continued on with the series, or with this book, because it features a character that I enjoy, a more background character in the previous books. So the main character is Nesta. She's the sister of Feyre, who's sort of the main character in the first books in the series. And Nesta, apparently, I've learned, like, reading a bunch of videos about this book, there's a lot of Nesta hate out there. And I understand that she, as a character, makes a lot of mistakes and bad choices, and she's really not the best sister to Feyre. And we of course see the story from Feyre's perspective in the earlier books, so we're meant to sympathize with Feyre, and we see how Nesta has wronged her in the past. But I don't know why, I just feel drawn to Nesta. She's kind of prickly, and I kind of relate to that as a person. She seems to be more the type to hold people at a distance, and she's a little bit more guarded, and she's a lot more mean than I would ever be. She's like way more blunt and abrasive than I would be, but I can kind of relate to the way she sort of has these self-sabotaging mechanisms in a way to keep herself from being hurt, and, you know, in turn not hurting other people as well. And so I'm just like really rooting for her as a character, so I was really looking forward to this book. And it's made clear in previous books that she's sort of gearing up to have a romance with a character called Cassian, who again is a character in the previous book. So it's basically like their love story, their romance, but it's really a story about Nesta coming into her own power, basically. And I loved it. I loved the romance. It was very satisfying, and that's really what I've been wanting from this series for a long time, and why I had felt disappointed in the previous release. And I think there are a lot of valid criticisms out there about Sarah J. Maas's writing, but one thing she does really well, at least for me, is romance and building the tension in a relationship. It just feels very believable to me. The banter seems very like lifelike and is entertaining. Well, I mean, sometimes it can be a little flowery. Like sometimes the dudes say things I'm like, no man would ever actually say that. And vice versa. Sometimes the girls can say strange things. But, you know, given the fantasy setting, it all kind of makes sense. But it's just a lot of fun. This book is a little bit dark. Nesta deals with a lot of her personal demons and has to confront, you know, why she is the way she is, why she is such an abrasive, hurtful person, why she pushes away the people that she loves. I read in the acknowledgements at the end, Sarah J. Maas says a lot of Nesta's journey is representative of her own mental health journey, and I can certainly relate to going through dark times in my life. I would say trigger warning for suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, just a little bit. I think it's still fairly minor, but for me personally, some of the, you know, reading from Nesta's perspective and some of the thoughts she was having also reminded me of, you know, took me to a dark place mentally. So just throwing that out there just in case, but it is ultimately a optimistic story, and, you know, a story about overcoming your own demons and all the things that are holding you back from like living your best life. And it's just really good. And I've said all of this in the reading vlog basically, but I do go into a little bit more spoilers if you want to hear some of that there. But at the time of reading my reading vlog, at the time of filming that reading vlog, I was not aware of the bonus chapters. I didn't find out about those until like a few hours afterward. Apparently in some editions, it wasn't on the Kindle edition, which is what I read, but some editions got a bonus chapter, and there's two versions. One is from Feyre's perspective and one is from Asriel's perspective. I really enjoyed both of the bonus chapters, and I feel like they gave a lot to the story, and they definitely have me excited for more in this series. So I'm kind of hopeful for a book from Elaine's perspective and a book from Asriel's perspective. This new book, or in A Court of Silver Flames, we met a new character who I fell in love with, which is Gwen. She's like quickly one of my favorite characters. I love like that she's a librarian. She kind of lives this sheltered, cloistered life, and she's sort of a religious person. It doesn't go super into it, but she is like a nun basically, and she loves to sing, and I just like, I identify with all of those things, and I just really like her. She just seems like a great character, and I'm hoping that we get to see more from her in the future. And judging at the chapter from Azrael, we will. And I'll just go ahead and say I ship it. I ship Azrael and Gwen. I'm really hoping that that comes to fruition. And I said in the reading blog, I'm still hoping for Lucien and Elaine to somehow work it out. But that's just my opinion. I do love a love triangle, so if there's like a love triangle involved, I feel like Sarah J. Maas would do it in a way that I would find entertaining. So yeah, I'm hopeful for the future. Miss Maas has won me over again. I kind of buried the hatchet for now. I think I forgive her for that whole novella thing. We'll see. So if it wasn't clear from all the gushing I've done, I really, really like this one. It's probably going to be one of my favorites of the year, and that's why I gave it 5 stars. So after finishing A Court of Silver Flames, I kind of had a bit of a book hangover, and you know, you just like get a sort of craving that like only a specific kind of book will be able to fix, and you can't really bring yourself to read other kind of books because they don't really, you know, scratch that particular itch. It's sort of that kind of feeling. I did read more in Forbidden, which I mentioned in my reading blog, but I still haven't finished it, and I lost my loan to Black Buck, so I got back in line to like hopefully finish that later. So those books, I'm not DNFing them because I do plan on reading them in the near future, but I did not get to finish them this month. But I did finish listening to an audiobook, which is The Cross and the Lynching Tree by James H. Cone. Now, this is a total tone shift from like what we were talking about. I feel kind of strange going from talking about this like dumb fairy romance to this very serious topic, but that's kind of how I am as a reader. I'm very all over the place, if you haven't noticed. But this was a book that I really wanted to read because of what it's about. And I was also motivated by the season that we're in. In the middle of February, the season of Lent started, which is a time of discipline and fasting, self-denial, and reflection in the Christian tradition. And part of that for me, and part of how I'm expressing that this year, is that I wanted to read more theological and kind of spiritual books to sort of nourish that aspect of my life, which I feel like I've kind of ignored recently, especially in the pandemic. That's something that just has kind of gotten pushed out of the way. And this is something that it's a book that had been on my list for a while that I'd seen recommended in the blogosphere and just like theologians and people that I follow. So the premise is basically sort of explained in the title. James H. Cone is a theologian, and he's actually from Arkansas. If you're not familiar, I live in Arkansas, and I'm from Arkansas, and I've lived here all my life. And so that connection, the Arkansas connection, was cool. It's not necessarily a positive connection because, well, being in a state like Arkansas, most of the time we get recognized is not really in a positive way, but it's cool that he came from here and he's grown into such an influential person. He likens the cross to the lynching tree because this cross is obviously a symbol of hope and faith, and it's just like a triumphant symbol for a lot of Christians around the world. But in the times of Jesus, in the times when Christ was crucified, that was, you know, a method of torture, and it was a method of execution. So he basically makes that analogy with the cross and lynchings in America, especially in slavery times and in segregated times, when anybody could lynch anybody with little to no consequences. It's basically, you know, an exploration of that, and he goes into how Jesus identifies constantly with the oppressed and the powerless in the society instead of the powerful, and how that's really an indictment of white Christianity in America, or American Christianity, in the sense that American Christianity wants to be powerful, wants to take over the government, to be the government, to, you know, basically like the inverse of what Christ was saying. And he really goes into a bunch about a big criticism or critique of one theologian in particular, which was interesting to me because I had bought this book a long time ago. It's by Reinhold Niebuhr, who is a theologian, and he was very influential in the 1900s and the 20th centuries. And he is like really well known for his social ethics, and I've seen him highly recommended on different theology blogs. I have yet to read this though, but after hearing how James H. Cone writes about him, I'm kind of hesitant to read this, but I still want to read it to evaluate his ideas for myself. I'm glad that I have this background on this guy that James H. Cone provides, which is basically, he criticizes him for being silent on the issue of civil rights and racism and not speaking out enough, because he was a very influential person and he was the preacher at a big church. And basically, yeah, he would talk about how bad racism was sort of more privately, but never actually did anything about it. Very similar to how you hear Martin Luther King, or you would hear him critique the white moderate and moderate America for being too cowardly and not wanting to change the status quo. But I'm glad I know that now, especially, since I was familiar with this guy. When his name came up, I was like, oh my gosh, I know him. I have his book. But it was really eye-opening and provocative and very convicting as a white Christian. It's not really a feel-good story. This is not some kind of like devotional that you read telling you how much God loves you and just like something to make you feel really good about yourself in the morning. Like, it's not that, but it's still very much hopeful and powerful, because the gospel is good news for the poor. The gospel is good news for the powerless in society, and it's so powerful. And the way that like James H. Cone illustrates that is just great. I also learned about the song Strained Fruits by Billie Holiday. That gets mentioned a lot in this, which I don't know how, but I'd never heard of before. And I finally listened to it last night after finishing this book, and it's a great song. And apparently Hulu has recently, it may not be brand new, but they released like a series or a movie about Billie Holiday. So now I really want to watch that, because now that I know some background on that song and the story of that song, I want to know more about her as an artist and how, she played into the story of American history. But yeah, it is a great book, and I do recommend it for all people. I think it's especially meaningful for Christians, but especially, someone wanting to understand American culture, and particularly Black American culture and the role that religion has played in it. It's very important. It's a very important read. So it was excellent, and I gave it 4 stars. So those are the only 2 books that I read in the latter half of February. Like I said, I kind of hit a slump where I just like didn't have the motivation. And also, I guess I can go ahead and say this. I got my 2nd dose of the Moderna vaccine, and it kind of kicked my butt. Like, I got it on Friday afternoon, and I was fine most of Friday. I just had a really sore arm. But then Tuesday, I got the body aches, and I was just really tired, and I didn't really have the urge to do anything. Like, I didn't even want to lay in my bed and read, because I kind of had a bit of a headache. It was just like one of those feelings like literally all I want to do is lay down and pretend I'm not a human for a little bit. But then it kind of wore off on Saturday. Today's Monday, and I'm feeling 100% again. So I'm really thankful to have had it and have been given the opportunity to get it. And I'm pro-vaccine. I do want everyone to get it if you have the chance, but yeah, it just kind of You know, I wasn't expecting to be hit that hard because the first dose was fine, but yeah, that's just life, you know? You're not always in control of everything, and your reading plans don't always come to fruition. So that's all for today's video. Thanks again for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these 2 books that I mentioned. I'm looking forward to March. Hopefully I can finally finish those books that I had to abandon this month. And I'm just excited to read books that I like want to read in March without having a specific kind of goal in mind. I think I'm gonna go more into mood reading and just kind of go wherever my mood takes me. So yeah, again, thanks again for watching. I almost said I'll talk to you later. Well, I will talk to you later. I think it's weird how we always say, I'll see you in the next video. When no, I'm not gonna see you. That's really weird. If I were going to see you, that's like an invasion of your privacy. You will see me, because that's how this filming recording process works. But I'm not gonna see you unless you make a video responding to me. Anyway, that's semantics, but whatever. Yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.